How I would start a newsletter from zero in 2026. Most people treat starting from zero as a panic-inducing condition. When I look at a blank screen or a new project, I don't see a void that needs to be filled as quickly as possible. I see a control position. Starting a newsletter in 2026 is no longer about growth hacking or finding the right platform to host your content. It is about defining the structure of your output before you ask for a single person's attention. If you rush to fill the space, you will only replicate the same noise you are trying to avoid. Here is how I would build a newsletter from the ground up, using the same define before you expand framework I use for every reset in my professional life. Stop looking for platforms, start defining control. The first mistake I see creators make is debating between Substack, Beehive, Ghost, or a custom site. They treat the platform as the structure. In my experience, the platform is just the utility. The structure is your process. Before I sign up for a single service, I define what the newsletter actually does for the reader. If you cannot explain the value proposition in one sentence, you aren't ready to launch. You're just ready to add to the noise. At the beginning, zero is your greatest advantage. You aren't beholden to existing subscribers who expect a certain type of content, and you don't have an advertising model that dictates your tone. Use this window to define the parameters. The frequency. Can you realistically produce this content weekly for 2 years? If the answer is no, change the frequency to monthly. Stability beats intensity. The utility. Is this newsletter for entertainment, or is it for leverage? If it's for leverage, your content must solve a specific problem or provide unique insight that isn't available elsewhere. The constraint. What topics are you strictly not covering? A newsletter that covers business and productivity and lifestyle is a newsletter that covers nothing. The trap of early expansion. There's a dangerous urge to chase subscriber counts in the first 90 days. We are conditioned to see big numbers as proof of validity. In my experience, early subscribers are often a liability if you haven't built the structure to support them. If you launch and hit 1,000 subscribers, you are now obligated to fulfill that promise every week. If your system isn't robust, you will start cutting corners, outsourcing to low-quality AI, or writing filler just to hit the deadline. I would approach this differently. I would view my first 100 subscribers as a testing group, not a vanity metric. I would ask myself, does this content generate a reaction? Are people opening it? Or is it just sitting in an inbox? Is the production process draining me? Or is it sustainable? If the answer to the last point is draining, you need to fix the internal system before you add more subscribers. Expanding on a broken system just accelerates the collapse. Clearing the clutter. What I refuse to carry. When starting from zero, the instinct is to copy what the successful newsletters are doing. I look at those massive, bloated newsletters and I see technical debt. They carry social media engagement tactics, clickbait headlines, and repetitive news aggregation filler. I refuse to carry any of that. For a newsletter to be sustainable in 2026, it must provide what the algorithmic feed cannot: deep, experience-based perspective. Here is what I am clearing out of my process. No breaking news. I am not a wire service. If the news happened today, the reader can find it anywhere. I only care about the analysis of why that news matters next month. No generic productivity hacks. If I haven't personally tested a tool or a workflow, I do not write about it. Curated means I tried it, failed, learned, and refined it. No inflated language. No game-changing, mind-blowing, or secret strategies. I write as if I'm talking to a professional peer. Establishing the system. Define your output before you publish. I don't start by writing the first issue. I start by building the input-to-output pipeline. A newsletter is just a machine that processes information. If the inputs are garbage, the output will be garbage. I spend the first 2 weeks just gathering and refining my inputs. First, I set up a dedicated capture system. Every idea, observation, or piece of data I find throughout the week goes into a central database. I do not try to write the newsletter in one sitting. I write it in pieces throughout the week. This shifts the work from creative labor, which is draining, to assembly labor, which is manageable. By the time I sit down to assemble the final version, 80% of the work is already done. Second, I define a clear format. I use the same heading structure every week. This creates a psychological rhythm for the reader and a physical structure for me. It removes the need to make creative decisions about how to start every single time I hit publish. Freedom within a framework is how you scale output without burning out. Stabilization. Building reliability before growth. Once the system is live, the goal is not to go viral. The goal is to reach a state of boring reliability. I want to be the newsletter that the reader knows will arrive on time, every time, with a consistent quality level. This is where most creators fail. They treat their newsletter like an artist project, relying on inspiration to get it done. I treat it like a service. If I am not in the mood to write, the Systemize database of notes, my predefined template, my scheduled deadlines takes over. If your output depends on your mood, your newsletter is not a business, it's a hobby. I would limit my growth at this stage. I would not buy ads. I would not run referral contests. I would focus entirely on word of mouth via high-value content. If the content is good enough, the expansion will happen naturally. If you have to force-feed growth through incentives, the foundation isn't ready to support the weight. Identity without history. Finally, I would reject the label of newsletter creator. It's too broad and too self-centered. It focuses on the persona rather than the product. I would identify as a knowledge operator. The focus is on the curation, the distillation, and the practical application of the knowledge I am sharing. When you detach your identity from the platform or the subscriber count, you become harder to destabilize. If the platform changes its algorithm, you aren't devastated because you own the process. If subscriber growth plateaus, you aren't panicked because you know the quality of the work is solid. By starting from zero and building with control, I create a structure that isn't dependent on the market's approval to exist. Key takeaways. Define before you expand. Do not choose a platform until you have defined a utility in your workflow. Prioritize reliability. A consistent, boring newsletter beats and sporadic, inspirational one every time. Systemize the work. Shift your process from creative labor to assembly labor by capturing ideas throughout the week. Clear the baggage. Refuse to replicate the clickbait and vanity metrics of larger, bloated publications. Be an operator. Identity should come from the work you do and the system you build, not the title you give yourself. Related articles. The Silent Trap of PDT of 2026, How to Start a Newsletter, Local AI versus Cloud AI, Best AI Tools for Beginners, Best Local AI Tools, How I Use AI, Self-Publishing Basics, AI Tools, Business Tools, Publishing Tools, Websites, Worth Bookmarking Report, Margin Risk on Cash-Secured Puts. Wedeter. We determine what connects. Explore. Home AI and Technology Business and Money Books and Publishing Resources. Quick links. About privacy policy terms of use contact. Copyright 2026 Wedeter.com. We determine what connects.